in on this area about 10 years ago at this point, and by virtue of its location and the fact that there were so many development paths in this specific area, we really derived a sort of investment thesis around it, and really viewed this as an opportunity to create the 21st century city, 21st century global city. It was by virtue of its location and the fact that it was underdeveloped, allowed us an opportunity to really create something large and to create something innovative. And so my partners and I set out on assembling land in this area, the downtown, and wound up assembling 79 blocking lots over 33 separate arm's length transactions, and deployed over $130 million in capital to put this land on our balance sheet. And then we set out on a planning effort, and we looked at plans around the world with the world-renowned architect Richard Meyer. And when we did that, we settled in on about 4 principles that would guide us through our master planning efforts, and that would guide us in our first phase alone, the Teachers Village project, which is the first phase of a much larger master plan. We settled in on middle-income housing, that we only had to look across the river and know that what the 1 million units of rent stabilizing, rent control units does, and that socioeconomic diversity does for the vibrancy of the city. We settled in on having the 3 food groups of real estate in the master plan itself and in the first phase. And so commercial, residential, and retail really need to work together to create that 24-hour, 7-day-a-week city. We settled in on scale. This area here was 92% surface parking lot, and so we really needed to create that community overnight. And so we needed to really go of scale, and we sort of settled in on going horizontal, several buildings in one project, and settled in on a $150 million first phase. And the last piece of it were clusters, and clusters of like-minded people. And so we settled in on educators. Educators fit the bill for us in a lot of different ways, the middle-income housing. What was born from that effort was the first phase, Teachers Village. Schools uniquely is our commercial component, about 104,000 square feet of schools, 4 different schools, 3 charter schools and 1 early childhood learning center, over 1,000 kids descending upon our neighborhood and sitting at our schools every day now for 2 years now. And that was 2 buildings of the 6 with school buildings over retail. We had the residential component, which are 4 buildings over retail, and it's 205 residential units pre-marketed to all teachers of Newark, district school teachers, independent school teachers, and charter school teachers of Newark. And again, all over retail, it's about 67,000 square feet of retail, which is the thread that sort of binds this community. Transforms over 6 city blocks in one broad stroke. We've completed 4 of the 6 buildings already. The other 2 are under construction. School buildings, the 104,000 square feet of schools are fully leased. The residential units we've delivered to date are 100% leased. And the retail throughout the entire community, even the retail we haven't built yet, is over 70% leased, and you're going to start to see those retailers coming in. There were no residences there. There are about half a dozen viable businesses, and we're building a 92% surface parking lot. And so when you looked at development in the region where you had at the time that we started buying this stuff, you had the Ratners fighting to get into Brooklyn. You had developers fighting every mile in New Jersey to get development rights. You had environmental constituencies fighting you at every corner. The Pinelands, the Highlands, the Meadowlands were off the table for development. And so the largest city in New Jersey became a real, and by virtue of its location and the ports and the airport and the university infrastructure that was here, this was the ideal development path, not only in this region, but quite frankly in the nation. There's a promise of economic development activity that, the economic reports that we've developed, over $100 million a year, full build-out, when we build out our full master plan, over $100 million a year in tax revenues to the city. And so that sort of in and of itself, Teachers Village catalyzing that effort in and of itself was significant. But what we did in the first phase alone was create a tool for the city to retain and recruit teachers. We created an economic development project. We have all kinds of, you have 20 different retailers coming in at grade. You have over 300 educators living in 205 residential units. And then you have the schools, which again, we view as a commercial, a real commercial draw. Our schools are open 6 days a week. In our view, better than having an office tenant there. So you have 6 days a week, and you have families, not just kids, descending on the neighborhood twice a day. So unique draw of demand. And in the end, what Teachers Village will be, and the value we can't calculate, so the incalculable value here, is the fact that you have these cluster of teachers. And what comes from the exchange of ideas, the exchange of teachers shopping together, playing basketball together, hosting kids after school in our lounges in the residential area, advancing their degrees, charter school, district school, independent school teachers socializing, and sort of the innovation of education that comes from there for this city and for this region. It really was a project. We had, at last count, we had over 20 approvals, both in local boards, state boards. We had financing from the CREDA, the Casino Reinvestment Development Authority, down in Atlantic City. So South Jersey folks had to weigh in on this project. New Jersey Economic Development Authority, goes without saying, City of Newark, but and different boards at Goldman Sachs and Prudential and so forth, but 20-something boards had to sort of approve this. And we had virtually unanimous approval from planning boards to zoning boards to city council approval. And the reason being is everyone understood the importance of a project of this scale. Everyone understood that this was for the community. So from that standpoint, we didn't have any challenges. Every other corner, we had challenges. So, I mean, you know, just building in an urban environment, building up against buildings, a scattered site development, multi-buildings being constructed at one time, figuring out construction costs on a union job in an urban area that had to be price sensitive because of the market that we were just, this is the first residential buildings to come out of the ground in Newark in 40 or 50 years. So that's sort of that economic dynamic. Putting the public, and in order to effectuate that, we needed this complicated web of public and private financing. We had like 50 attorneys on our closing calls trying to close this stuff, put stuff together. It's probably the largest new market tax credit project. Teachers built from end to end, $117 million in new market tax credit allocation. Probably the largest new market tax credit transaction since the inception of the program. And so the complication that comes from that, so to build that multiple layer of financing with the city, the state, and qualified school construction bonds out of the Fed. Also, I mean, it would, you know, in order to get this thing financed, it was extremely complicated. But we had normally, when you have a scattered site development, also you have, so we had one tenant there that was sort of, they had to relocate and needed, they were in a dilapidated building. We built them a state-of-the-art sort of space, got them a permanent home, but like, you know, those complications on the ground. So every step of the way, we had every development challenge you could face in a project was complicated, but in terms of, and the only reason we could do it is because we had the community support and we had public and private partnership that everyone was pushing for us, and that's the only way you get over this sort of complicated project that we had.
Embrace the idea of having development in that area, residents downtown, which is a goal for everybody. So then ultimately that we go through any other issues that will ever take place, and ultimately that was the main linchpin of it all.
What are the prospects for the full build-out?
A project called Four Corners, which is it's another, the first phase alone is another two $100 million buildings. We have a hotelier out of Barcelona, Spain, coming here that runs the Eurostar Wall Street Hotel in New York and Dillon Hotels in New York. We have world-famous architects coming to work here. Richard Meyer, who we worked with on this first, again, do another building. There's another world-renowned architect that we're just about to lock down to do the building. And so we're moving right along here. We have EDA already approval on the next round for this Four Corners building. Right on Walter Street, we have Whole Foods coming. We, in our development, have a convenience store, Krauser's coming, and a fresh food grocer. Small little outpost for our residents there. But that's why we also merchandise the retail to over 20 different retailers. One, we really want to merchandise to just mom and pop retailers, entrepreneurs creating unique flavors so that you couldn't replicate this at Short Hills Mall, sort of a unique destination retail. But also, you know, the diversity in the offerings. So that our residents, so that the downtown has a diversity of offerings from the different retailers. We have eateries, we have a medical office, we have craft stores. You know, our Discovery Charter School has a store that the crafts are being sold. We have clothing consignment. A woman who graduated from one of the charter schools that are in Teachers Village started a successful business in Maplewood. We're bringing her down to downtown Newark to start, to have her own sort of storefront. And so we have offerings for the residents that live within the community, offerings for the greater downtown, and offerings just in general to service the families that we're sending on our neighborhood. So again, a nice sort of suite of medical offerings, dentist, pharmacy, doctor's office. Our first building that we delivered in Teachers Village, the first residential building, we were 100% pre-leased. People were seeing the buildings while they were under construction, leasing units. The second building that we delivered, you can see sort of in the windows there, we were 85% pre-leased. And I'm convinced it's because we delivered between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is notoriously, first it was a freezing time this year, but also it's notoriously the worst time to be because people aren't moving between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We were 85% pre-leased and we've since 100% pre-leased. So on the residential side, we're really absorbing all the units. It's best, and we're already pre-leased on buildings that we're just, we have a pre-leasing effort, people putting deposits and applications before we even finish the building. So on the residential side, while people anticipated challenges, we're not having challenges to lease up the apartments. On the schools, we were pre-leased, which was really sort of an anchor to get this thing done. And on the retail, again, we were about over 70% pre-leased on the retail on stuff that we haven't delivered. And so we went after the retailers in the region that we wanted, the mom and pop operators. First we started in Newark. Those operators that were successful in the last 7 to 8 years here, we thought that they knew the market, so we went after them and figured out how they can expand into our area. So we have several eateries that have done very well in downtown Newark that we helped them expand. And then we went out into the region and found entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs that we wanted to bring here. And so, you know, when you're dealing with small entrepreneurs, there's certainly a heavier capital lift to get them here. But nonetheless, the interest was here, the desire to expand in this market, the desire to get a foothold in this market, and really, you know, make a claim for themselves in this downtown that everyone understands is going to be in the next few years, going to be a tremendous growth node. And so there was a real desire to come here and operate and figure it out with us. And so we've done very well in that regard too. Took effort, but we did very well.